Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Session 1, Breeding, Fertility and Performance in High Output Systems. My name is Mark Little, and I'm chairing this first session this morning. But you're not here to hear me, and that is because we have a fantastic lineup of speakers this morning who will each share their perspectives on achieving productivity, efficiency, and animal health in high-output dairy systems. With time tight, we'll keep introductions brief, and as Jerry has already said, we'll hold questions and answers until after the three talks. Please do use Slido, but you can jot down some of your questions as well, and I'll endeavour to try to take some of them as well. So, our first speaker is Conor Casey. Conor is a farmer from Cloughmills who farms 240 pedigree Holstein cows with a herd average of over 10,000 litres on 4 Gaia milking robots and robotic Gaia feeding system. Conor has a keen interest in genetics and will be discussing how genomic testing has enabled him to make better informed breeding decisions. Please welcome Conor.
Thanks, Ray. Thanks very much, Mark. I feel like Roy McIlroy in the first tee box at Augusta here. So we'll give it a whirl and give it a swing and see how it goes. Right, so as Mark says, I'm Conor Casey. I farm in partnership with my father. We have a long-term employee, Peter, and my son's recently joined the business. We farm about 270 acres in Cloughmills, just sort of in the hills behind it. The herd size ranges from 240 to 250, as Mark says, in the fully robotic feeding and milking system. The followers, there's 140 of them. They're in a contract rearing arrangement with a neighbour, and I'll cover a wee bit of it later. Each year we try and sell 30, 40 heifers, milking heifers, and also a further 50 to 60 heifer calves. Now, these last few years, they've nearly all been sold through the yard and to repeat clients. Calving-wise, we start calving in August, end in April. Now, in a robotic system, they say you should calve all year round, but I like a break. I like a break for calving house. I like a break for just everything, gets everything cleaned down and resets. Calving index at the minute's 383. Average heifers coming into the herd at 23 months old. Production now rolling, we're up to 10.8. 4.6% butter fat and 3.6 protein. Somatic cell score at the minute's just in the low hundreds. Daily production at the minute's around between 38 and 39, just depending on the day. Last test was 455 and 362. Feed rate at the minute's 0.42, so this year now we're a lot happier. So I'll give you a bit of background to the farm. I come home from Greenmount in '96. When things was great and saving the planet was using CFC-free deodorant. We come home with a mixed 40 cow dairy farm, 250 sheep. We had one poultry unit and a second poultry unit gone up, but I wasn't home long I developed a great distaste for sheep and sheep farming. And with the help of Alan Ignew sitting in the crowd here today and the late William McCulloch, we convinced Daddy that there was no future in sheep farming. I think it was what the late William told him, that the best performing sheep farm was still more the best performing sheep farm couldn't touch the worst performing dairy farm for profit, and I sort of allowed that's the type of odds I like. So from 2000 on, we started to get rid of the sheep and renovated cubicle houses. By 2005, there was a new parlour installed. We went from a 6-point to a 16. In them days, there was about 90 cows. And the new parlour was really a great leap forward for production, just feed to yield, automation. It really helped us. Then in '08, there was another new cubicle house in the farm nutrient management scheme. And then we still probably would have been grazing in them days, but by 2012, there was a new heifer unit built, and we're starting 3 times a day milk and total confinement. But like most idiots in Northern Ireland, I bought a zero grazer then, but I wasn't zero grazing very long to decide it wasn't for us, and then went down the multi-cut silage route. But 3 times a day was great for pushing yield, but it brought with it the usual kind of labour issues. Relief milkers were great till you hit about May time, and they get the smell of diesel, and they just get the grass itches. So then we started looking into robots, and in 2018 we started installing robots. By that stage we were up to 175 cows, and at that stage we had too many cows for 2 robots, not enough for 3. So I didn't know what to do. Daddy wanted to cut back, but it kind of wasn't in the idea I had. And then I know the man down the road, a really good farmer, but he was at a stage, his sons was all being educated, so I approached him and we done a deal for contract rearing. Now, I'm sure some of you have do deals or things like that, but I thought we'd run through it anyway. So Damien sold all his stock, and my heifers go to him at 4 months old, and they stay to a month from calving. Damien supplies the forage, the labour, the housing, the heat detection. I supply all bottom feed, veterinary, semen, and an AA technician. And as I say, the arrangement works really well. The animals are priced per day, so they're the same price every day they're at Damien's. Some people do it split, but just for easiness, we do it that way. And they're just paid every month. And then that gave us the capacity to go for 3 robots and bring us on up to 200 cows. And then in 2021, we bought 70 acres of land, and we put in a 4th robot, so that again gave us scope to go on up. And then Damien also increased, so the two of us kind of grew together, and it just works well, the system. Then 2024, our last kind of big project was a robotic feeding system, so I'll cover a wee bit on that later. So moving on to genomics, how did I get started? That just looks like a bull to most of you, but that's a bull I sold to AA. I always had a keen interest in genetics and how to improve cows, because when I was young and looking at AA catalogues, I was mesmerised by the yields and the fat and proteins of these bull mothers and seeing how far we were behind it. So by 2009, we were starting to get a few bulls into AA, and the AAs were going down the genomic route, so we basically moved with them. They were testing bulls, and then they were testing their female siblings to see what's the next potential for bull mothers. And over the next probably 6-7 years, there was around maybe 12 bulls went to AA. But the thing I really loved about genomics at the start was the first thing that leveled the playing field. So we weren't a big, well-known herd. We hadn't a well-known prefix, anything like that. But if you had the best genomic bull, you had the best genomic bull. Reputation meant nothing. And also, then we started to see the heifers. The heifers were showing the same trends as their genomic test. You know, if you had a high milk heifer, she tended to be the high milk one. If you had a high component one, etc. So by 2015, I would say, we started testing everything to get a better understanding of the herd, because, as I say, we were starting to see the results. So for those of you that don't genomic test, you might all be looking at us and say, what the hell's he, or an iceberg up there? But that is the simplest way I had it. Just trying to explain to me, the bit above the surface is the animal you see. If you're looking at a pen of heifers, that's what you can see. That's her legs, her feet, the way she walks, all that type of stuff. The genomic test is what's below the surface. So you have data for fat, protein, you can really see the potential of that animal. That's something like 2 years milk recordings. So potentially you have 2 years worth of milk recording data when the calf's 5-6 months old. So that's why we went down that route. Now, there's differences and all the rest of it, but for the practicalities of genomic testing, you have 2 ways. You have a tissue sample or you have a hair sample. My advice would be go for the tissue sample every time. It's basically like a BVD tag. You just take a wee notch. Price-wise, the tests range from the low 20s to the high 30s. sub 25 pound will be your basic UK test, so your fat, protein, all on the UK base. Once you get into the low 30s, you're paying for American figures as well, Canadian figures as well. So just depending on what you're after, what level you want to go to. Now, I do test in America and the UK. When I would have been solely testing UK, I kind of felt we were losing a wee bit of production. So I kind of like to look at the animals on a few bases to find out what ones are the really best. But, it does pull up animals you don't expect. At the start, we were just testing, as I say, embryos I bought, etc., etc. But I found a family within the herd that at a time produced the #1 calf in the UK, and that was just a homebred family. So you might have stuff in there that you just don't realise how good they are. There's a few slides to show you genomic results. So down one axis, down the side axis, is the animal's genomic test. Along the bottom is the parent average. So you can see from that plot graph, they do sort of follow the general trend, but within that, you take figures. There's calves there, say, at 400 parent average. The lowest of them test at 250 in genomics. The highest is near 600. So, taking a parent average isn't really going to give you the data you need, where the genomic test, as I say, you're really getting in there. You're getting to the kind of the information you need. This is another graph. Now, this is taking all my milking animals' genomic test for milk production, and down the other side is their actual 305-day yield. So you can see, as I say, take that line there. It's quite simple. If you breed for milk, you'll get milk. You take the ones at the bottom end are the poorest genomic figures for milk. The ones at the far end are the highest, and the yield follows that exact trend. There's another graph here just to highlight when we started milking the daughters of genomic tested. All our milking daughters were genomic tested. So at the start, when we were 3 times a day, like our milk quality was just average quality, your bog standard base average. So in the case of like 6-7 years, we went from 383 fat till 454 was our final this year, and that's milk sales. Protein went from 316. Last year it finished at 352, and it's still rising. Like we're now over 3.6. Every month this year's been over 3.6. So if you really test, target what you want to target, and move with it, you can really make results. This here's a fertility graph, and fertility would be classed as one of the lowest heritability traits. It's right at the bottom. So along the bottom axis is the fertility index. That's again for all milkers in our farm. And up the other side is days till they were PD'd in calf. So you can see, like, you take them -10 ones, they're up at 140, 150 days till they conceive. You take down to the ones that are +20, they're down to 100 days. Like, the graph just shows that if you breed for fertility, again, you'll get fertility. The boys at AgResearch said to me that they wanted me to do a wee bit in the robotic feeding system we installed. As I say, it's the first one of these in the UK and Ireland. It's a Gia feeding robot. We already had Gia robots, which helped. McKnight Dairy Services done a really good job with the robots, and my brother also works to Gia, so I felt it wasn't taking too much a chance, even though it is, as I say, the first. The principles of the system is a wee bit different to the other ones. You have an autonomous tub that drives through the yard. Now, there's no strips, there's nothing sunk into the concrete. As a navigation system, you can just see there at the very top, there's 2 wee navigation domes. As the whole yard mapped, so it just drives the exact same route every time, and if it goes off course, you take it back to home, you just walk it back like a dog, basically. The bunkers is the main reason I like this system, just the simplicity of them. So we have 4 bunkers, you load the bunkers, just dump your silage in, and it's a walking floor that goes up to the front, and there's like 2 beaters to open the silage down into the tub. So our system, we've 4 bunkers, we've 4 mineral hoppers, and we've also 4 straight bins, and then water. So any ration can be adjusted, dry matter, fat or protein, starch, whatever way you want. The 4 bunkers of silage, milking cow silage, dry cow silage, 1 for maize or whole crop, and then straw, and then the straights are just soya, rape, soya hulls, and yellow meal at the minute. But again, the flexibility to change whatever way you want. But the system itself can handle about 15 tonne of feed per day. Ours is doing 12, 13, so I have a wee bit of capacity. So at times of the year when we're at silage or really busy, we can have it working all night and just turn it off, because there's enough bad drivers about our yard to have the risk of them reversing into it. This now is a wee video for you to show and basically explain how it goes. It'll only take a few seconds, so I'll roll it here. Don't know about that mix that was put out there. It was a wee bit dodgy looking, but anyway. So, as I say, we're going a year now. I should have also mentioned about charging and things. You could see the charging dock in that video. The system doesn't actually have to stop to charge. So when it's in the last bunker, if you have that bunker with the forage that you're using the most of, it's connected to the charging dock, and also it charges when it's mixing, so there's not actually any downtime for charging. But as I say, we're going 1 year now. We started it next week, a year ago. So what we found, and the same number of cows, probably a few less, because you all know the price of fat cows, so one doesn't need to look at you too far to make a decision, but we're up about 228,000 litres. Protein has increased from 3.4 to 3.58, still rising. We're now well into the 3.6s. Fat, 4.4 to 4.56. Now for the negatives. The system cost with bins, augers, all that type of stuff, 280,000. You're roughly talking probably closer to 3 maybe the day. We're putting the shade and stuff over it. We haven't finished it, and we haven't at all cost it. But we needed a new tractor. We needed a new diet feeder. It's actually a far better proposition than you probably think. It takes probably half an hour a day to keep the bunkers and silage, to keep the minerals topped up, wash the sensors, all the rest of it. But it's the production gains, like it's the labour saving. We probably were 2.5, 3 hours a day doing mixes. We mixed our own meal, and it saves so much time. And as the cows are healthier, constant feed, like they're being fed 6-7 times a day, it does actually work very well. And with us having the gear robots, if I dry off 10 cows, it automatically takes 10 rations out of the mix. If I calve 10 cows, same thing. So you can adjust it any way you need. Running costs, we put a meter on it just to see what electricity it was using. It's using around 48 kilowatts a day. And we have solar and all, so it kind of integrates well into the farm. Servicing costs, you're talking about $5,000 a year. So that's basically the nuts and bolts of it. But the system does do well, like, and has helped push efficiencies in the farm, just like all these other things. So that's nearly me finished. But before I go here, I would there's your next speaker's Keith, but there's a few breeders here know him well. So on behalf of all the Northern Ireland breeders, welcome to the mainland, Keith.